Awesome. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here today. And for those of you watching the replay, so glad you're here as well. Just want to very briefly start off by grounding us in why we're having this conversation, why it matters so much that we show up and speak up in the pelvic health space. Having a state level pelvic health position paper is really much more than a formality. It's a really powerful tool that helps define who we are, what we do, and why it matters in this often overlooked area of care. It also gives us credibility. It gives us a unified voice, and it helps ensure that pelvic health is recognized as a valid and essential part of occupational therapy practice. I'm not just talking about clients, but also legislators, payers, educators, and any other healthcare professional that we interact with. So, a strong position paper helps us to advocate for inclusion, appropriate reimbursement, for access to education and training. It puts language to what so many of us who are already doing in our work, supporting clients with pain, toileting, intimacy, trauma, the very things that are at the heart of our profession. So, just as importantly, it sends a message to other OTs, right? That we belong here. This is our scope and this is our space. So, today's conversation is about planting the flag. It's about creating clarity, alignment. Got a few more people coming in. Clarity, alignment, and momentum for OTs and pelvic health, not just for us, but for the future of our profession and the clients we serve. So we're hearing from the best of the best today. We have representation from 2 states who have already done this. The goal is to equip us all with super practical insights on how to advocate for our own position papers in each of our own states. We want all 50 states represented by the end of the year. Is that too lofty of a goal? And if you're here joining us live, if you don't mind in the chat, let us know what state you're in, because we're going to start that process of making connections right here on this phone call. So we have about 30 minutes to hear from our panelists, and then we've carved out 30 minutes to hear from you. We want this time together to be as interactive, almost like a workshop where you can ask any and all of your questions to our panelists. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to begin with a super quick group introduction. So if each of you could just kind of go round robin and share your name, the state that you represented, what role you played in the process, and then a word or a phrase that describes the biggest lesson that you learned. Marlene, I'll kick it off with you because you happen to be on my screen.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to acknowledge the chat. We have Canada, New Jersey, Arizona, and Michigan represented. So 4 new places that are not represented within this panel, which is really exciting. So I'm so happy that everybody is here. My name is Marlene Handler. I am a pelvic health OT in private practice in Brooklyn, New York. So New York, I represent New York. And I would say the role that I played, I actually came into it a little bit kind of into the mix already. And so I really started to like hear the document as a whole and started to really reduce like what is the necessary components of this document. So there was so much information just put in. And I kind of came at the time where we started to filter through that information. And that's where I kind of stepped in. And then one word that describes, what was the second or the last part?
It describes the biggest lesson you learned.
Oh, the biggest lesson. It really takes a team. Like it takes a team.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can do this by themselves.
Yeah.
So that's
You want to
my
shout out Marlene for the next person to introduce themselves?
sure. Nicole Naguib.
Thank you, Marlene. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Naguib. I am a pediatric school-based therapist with an interest in pelvic health. I just completed a capstone related to pelvic health and obtained my doctorates. I'm representing New York State. Um, And my role for this was pretty much more onto the research writing portion of this, finding out which articles, what level of the articles, and really putting that into what the goal and the purpose of writing this position statement is. And something I learned when I was thinking about this, I thought back to Maya Angelou's quote of when we know better, we do better. And that's what I'm really taking out from this whole process. I've learned more, I've excelled more, I'm ready for a next step. Let's go with Jackie.
Um, I'm Jacqueline. I'm representing New York. I have a private practice in Queens called Integrative Pelvic Wellness. I came in at the start. So I was a part of finding articles as well as going through the articles and putting them into a document. And I think we'll kind of touch on like the process of how we went about going to do everything. And then a part of writing it. And it, I would say it's a lot of consistency. And just like Marlene said, like it takes a team. And I think as part of like New York, we were just such a great team and it was so fun to work with everybody. But yeah, dedication and when it comes to like the whole process and like the purpose, I would say like dedicated to the purpose, right? So the ultimate purpose is getting OT in our profession out there because we are so well versed in pelvic health and it's important to just keep that in mind. And in a world of, different moving parts, I think how solid OTs are in pelvic health is important to acknowledge. So it's just keeping that in mind and just keep going. I am going to shout out Carlin.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Carlin Rayom. I am the lone representative from California. I have a private practice, West Coast. I've got a private practice supported mama here in Sacramento. And my role, my role was I was the person who initiated the conversation with our board here at our state's professional association, drafted the initial motion, and we'll get into these logistics, I think, in a bit. But yeah, I led the initial push to get it going, and then once it was approved to move forward. I was the lead author and person who was reaching out to get input on from everybody to get our final document launched. So yeah, I was really intimately involved with the process. And so I think I have two words I would say, both patience and persistence. Absolutely. So let's see, I will turn it over to Laura Rowan.
You. And I would have to say, Carlin, you were all of the roles. You did them all. And so my name is Laura Rowan. I'm in New York. And, really this process started a couple years ago for me. And Carlin had just passed her or gotten her statement passed. So that was a wonderful resource to be able to incorporate and just kind of follow the torch with. And I think it came up because the OTs were asking the state board, can we do this work? And the state board was like, Laura, how can I answer this? And then we really started saying, let's get ahead of this. Even our legislative rep, he's like, let's get ahead of this to make sure that nobody takes this away from us, right? Because we were doing it and we had the justification, but we didn't have it in writing. So it was being able to support OTPs to say, yes, we can do this work. And, we're rule followers. So we don't really like to hear, yes, as long as you get the training, we're okay with it. Like we want to see it in writing. And so that's what really kind of motivated us to move forward. I think initially there was a lot of, nervous energy around trying to get a statement because we were worried that people would start to deny and say no. But I think at this point we had so much confidence, and we know it's so grounded in our scope of practice that that we really could confidently move forward with it. So um, that was kind of my role, was the initiation, and then really trying to like reach out to people. Like I said, Mara was a big role, Carlin was a big role in that, and then reaching out to the people. Marlene and Nikki I met through Pramat, and just there had big roles out there, and Jacqueline had big roles out there teaching and advocating already. And Carissa, of course, we had met and being able to just support her role. She needed that justification for her hospital to have confidence to hire her. So I would say, of course, collaboration is a big word, but I think protection is another one that kind of comes to mind to really support and ground us. So us and for our clients, right? To make sure that they have access to the work. Um, oh, Nikki and Chris,
Hi.
we have left. Yeah.
I am a pelvic floor occupational therapist. I am in Rockland County, New York. I have a private practice, Pivotal Performance, and my part was kind of from the beginning. So between me and Laura, we kind of grabbed up people that we thought would be a group because when we were kind of looking at everything, we were like, we should get other hands in this because this might be big and we could use the help. So I had met Jacqueline on IG, and I was like, I love her. I love her ability to work, and she's a great person. And I was like, I'm just gonna ask. So I asked her, and I was kind of scared because I thought she was gonna be like, I have a practice to run. But she joined. And then I helped kind of write some of the documents as well. Um, and I would say the biggest lesson that I've learned is that communication is key. Patience is absolutely important. And always, looking on the bright side of things and always trying to push forward, even if it appears that it might not go the way you want it to.
So fantastic. Was that everyone?
I still have
Perfect.
to
All right.
go.
Clarissa?
Yeah,
Carissa.
I still gotta go.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carissa O'Rourke. I'm an occupational therapist, and I specialize in orthopedic, neural interventions. And recently, within the past year, I started specializing in pelvic health. And I reached out to Laura when I wanted to change places of work because I wanted to start practicing pelvic. And made that connection with Laura, and I'm the first and only practicing occupational therapist in pelvic health at Saratoga Hospital in New York. And so from that, I went and did a discussion on how to become occupational therapist practicing in the hospital setting. And after that discussion, Nicole and Laura reached out to me saying they could really use my perspective um, on this position statement that they're working on. So I said, absolutely. I don't know what I'm doing, but sure. The unknown can be scary, but it was the perfect time for it. So my role, I feel like the word connection comes into mind. Like the pieces were already there, and I kind of just helped put them together. I did some research. I read through some articles, but kind of just linked it all. I did some writing, but again, just kind of connected with people already in the process to kind of give them that different, newer perspective of hospital setting, acute care setting, to give a well-rounded scope. I also was able to go to our state conference and make connections there to be like the face of it, which was again kind of scary because I'm like, fake it till you make it. But I had confidence in what we were doing, what we were saying, so it was very exciting. As far as lessons, as an OT motivation, I feel like we were so motivated to keep, we had to, up till 10 o'clock, a lot of nights, a lot of weekends, and keeping the momentum. we get a part done and they'd be like, all right, do you want to go to the next part? Absolutely. If you keep that momentum, doing this workshop, keeping the momentum going, is so important in this process.
Oh, I love that. Thank you everyone for sharing. Like it's such an incredible, it's so obvious, such an incredible amount of work went behind the scenes for all of you. So fantastic. So we are going to jump into the portion now where we have about 12 or 13 questions for our panelists, and we wanted to try to be super organized. So we actually have certain representatives that are going to speak to them. Carlin Rayom is clearly the only one here from California. So, Carlin, you're invited at any point just to kind of jump in and give an alternative perspective, because I have a feeling states are varying so much in the way that this process actually unfolds. So, anything you want to contribute, Carlin, we're all ears. We're going to get started with Laura. So, Laura, what was the very first step you took to get this positioned in New York? I think you're on mute.
Thank you. The very first step was meeting with Michael Roth and Jeff Tomlinson. So Michael Roth is the VP of NYSOTA, the New York State OT Association, and Jeff Tomlinson is the like legislative government chair. And so we kind of basically, I think Carl and I have spoken, it's kind of like finding a sponsor, finding someone within the association on the board who's interested in this conversation. And then they can kind of help you propose it to the board. So meeting with them, and they were very supportive and interested in it to begin with. So that was helpful. I didn't have to try to convince them. And then from there, they were able to propose to the board for me to do a 15-minute presentation. So, I kind of put in our resource toolkit the outline and the notes that I put together to present to them. So I spoke for about 15 minutes and rambled, and they liked it. It was a unanimous yes. So that was the go ahead to start the process for writing the position statement. Yeah, and then from there we did a lot of evidence gathering and just started. We kind of had a template that we were working off of to figure out like what education was out there, what levels of training were already established. And then from there, just really worked on building a team, bringing in the players to be able to move it forward. Because I said from the beginning, I'm not a writer, so I'm not going to be great in that. I will help review. I will help make sure that all the stuff is in there that we want. But we're going to need, especially, people who know research and to be able to go through the different levels. That was kind of the big step that moved the ball forward after we got the go ahead.
So not only did this team give up their time today to do this, but they actually put together what Laura just referenced, which is the resource toolkit. So Laura, if you want to drop the link for that in the chat, that would be great. And then Mara is asking if you could share the template you used. I'm guessing that's in the toolkit already.
Yes. So it's interesting. The original template workbook that we were working on in the beginning, like this was a couple years ago, we shifted away from eventually. So I can't really share that because that was more of a NYSOTA form anyway. But the resource toolkit has pretty much everything that we worked off of, and it has the entire resource library with all the summaries that these guys put together and like levels of evidence and that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
The second question, I think you guys have already answered, but if there's anything else in addition you'd like to add to it, that would be amazing. And that question was also for you, Laura, which is, did you get started solo and then find others to collaborate, or how did that go down?
I started solo, and then after about a year we were just like, okay, we need people. And then after we created this team, it was probably like I'd say maybe 3 month turnaround.
Awesome.
It was pretty
Perfect.
quick, yeah.
Marlene, who was your biggest ally in this process and how did you connect with them?
I mean, besides this team, I would say the biggest allies that we had were Jeff Tomlinson and Richard Sable, who's like kind of a known name in this niche specialty in New York. He's a professor, he's a practitioner. He's been a huge advocate for us in terms of like just having this conversation with as many people as possible to kind of make this just something that people keep hearing about and are curious about within NYSOTA, within the academic institution that he works. So he's been a really big advocate for us. I mean, he attends all of our communities of practice. He's always emailing with us. He's really kind of like he's one of the forces behind this machine right now, which is really, really cool to have sort of I would say, as like an elder in this specialty, somebody that's been around, it's done it for a long time, as our support and as our advocate. So yeah, he's been amazing. And the team was just amazing. Like everybody here just really, like Carissa said, just had so much momentum. Everybody was so clear on their why, like why they're doing this, that it was like no questions asked. Every day, every week was like grinding to get this finished, which was just really inspiring.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Jacqueline, how did you decide what language to use in your position paper? And did you use any existing AOTA resources?
So when it came to like collecting the articles, it was mainly just going through evidence-based articles, looking over what they had about pelvic health and ideally OT, but we did move into some PT articles as well. And then we put it into levels. So was this a high level research article? Was it lower level? And then we each put some that we found into a database. So I think we each got like maybe we were like super quick with them. I think it was like we were just collecting them, putting into the database, reading them, and going through each one of them. We did look at AOT. We kind of looked at whatever was available in terms of public health, specific language at one part of the position paper. We did look at the PAMS language. So I know that there were specific parts that they wanted it to connect a little bit more with OT language. So we looked at the PAMS language. We did kind of spend a lot more time with internal work and what that looked like for OTs. And that was something that we kind of reviewed as a team to see what was the best way to touch on it and to speak on it. So that was kind of like the main process of the research aspect of it.
Fantastic. Carlin, would you mind giving us the perspective of California on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share a little bit of the foundational pieces. So just like Laura mentioned, the process being initiated in New York, similar process here in California. An advantage that I had was at the time I was the advocacy chair within the state's association. So I had a close relationship with the board. They knew my passion for this work. And so it was easy for me to get the ball rolling. And to I drafted up a motion, which was then sponsored by the vice president at the time of our state's association, brought it to vote for the entire board. And it also passed unanimously where they said, yes, we do want to proceed with this. And so then I started working on pulling together the research, similar process. But since it was just one of me, I would say I didn't spend as much time diving into the depths as I think the New York crew did. And so I really applaud this group for the work that they did, and putting together that detailed list of references is really an amazing asset that is really helpful for all OT practitioners who want to move forward with this. So kudos to you all for putting that together. So the language that I used, I think given my background being the advocacy chair for our professional association, regularly attending our regulatory board meeting, so that's the California Board of Occupational Therapy, I was used to being around the language that they were hashing out, and what would be a good approach, kind of like toe the line of what provided enough information, but not too much information that then people would have questions about it. So I was like familiar with the language that I felt like would be the best. I also was involved in writing the societal statement on reproductive health for AOTA, and I had written that, gosh, all time is blurring together, but a couple months before. And so I was familiar with the style of writing, and also kind of, again, like making sure that things are enough in a gray area that it gets your point across, but it's not too specific, then that people will say, no, that's not allowed, and it's a very specific, narrow area to be in. And so I was using those experiences to make sure that the language kind of met all these criteria. And again, I reached out to many of you as collaborators to just kind of see, okay, what do you think? Do we need to be stronger about internal work, or do I need to kind of cut out this or that? So it was quite a process. I think that's one of the hardest parts about it is you can't put everything in there that you want to have in there, because then that gives more specifics for people to have issues with, almost, so it's like figuring out how can you have enough to provide support for what you want to have support, but not too much that people are going to have an issue with it.
Amazing. Thank you, Carlin. Carissa, what did you learn about communicating with your state board through this process?
So, backing on what Carlin was saying, I kind of wrote some notes down before so I could speak to it. And there's so many layers to the process. Understanding the policies, understanding the members that are on the board, get to know them. You can't just walk in or attend a meeting and expect that your topic is going to be on the agenda. You have to kind of make those connections and get on that agenda. Also, be prepared to know what your goal is, meaning you don't have to show all of your cards at once. Be prepared to have information, but it's like a delicate dance, like Carlin was saying, where you don't want to give too much information because then it can restrict you further, but you want to give enough information where then you can have that guidance and reassurance. So I call it the delicate dance. And so just attend meetings, get to know the language, and make those connections.
Perfect. And then one more question for you, Carissa. How did you handle pushback or confusion about pelvic health being within our scope?
So I feel like this is an area that I can speak really greatly to, because being the first and only occupational therapist at a hospital practicing, I've had to defend a lot. At first, it's really hard to not get emotional and really get passionate, but like you have to take the emotion away from it and go back to your evidence. Go back to your practice framework, go back to the scopes of practice, and we belong here. And that if the research can back that up, if what we do can back that up, then there should be no issue. A lot of the research did have to come from physical therapy articles, but then you can make those connections to what we do, and it's like that full circle. So yeah, it's a process. Use your strategies so that you can do nervous system resets, because sometimes I really need to do that. But yeah, just go back to the evidence.
Perfect. Perfect. Jacqueline, for anyone listening to this who is also thinking about assembling a team, recognizes, that the help could be there, how do you recommend they divide responsibilities?
I can touch on like how we did it, and it worked so well for us. And we kind of just jotted down what needed to be done. And as a team, we were just like, okay, I'm going to take this one. 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 And there was like no pushback to anything. We really worked so well together. So I think that the end goal is kind of what you have to focus on. And that's just getting the job done. And then as like a team, what we did is that each person that had their section, or each team, because sometimes two people were to like one topic, we would read it aloud, and then we would all comment on it. So we were able to listen to how it was flowing. And if somebody had to like add in, okay, maybe let's look at it from a different perspective, maybe let's think about other language for it. But it kind of flowed naturally, I feel, for us, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, there was like no I guess like pushback on what the roles were. We kind of just knew like this needs to be done, and how are we going to go about it? Let's focus on our strengths as what we could contribute to each, topic, and that's how it came about.
Awesome. I love that. This next question is about the timeline. And Laura answered it asked the question in the chat. But Laura, Rowan, or Carlin, do you either one of you have any more you want to add to the timeline from idea to approval?
So I shared in the chat my timeline. It was about 6 months. The motion was introduced, and I looked back in my old records. It was September of 2023, and it was officially adopted in March of 2024. And so about 6 months. And a lot of that was just like waiting for the next board meeting, to have just for people to approve, or, that kind of thing. So that's where the patience comes in, is there are like just occasional checkpoints, and that's just, you just have to wait until it's the next board meeting. And I wanted to just I want to say one more thing about the language and just the conversation we're having. I think it's really hard and important in this kind of work, where because we're all so passionate about it, like the passion inherently comes through, or is tempted to come through in the writing. But position statements are not opinion pieces, or like they're not meant to be passionate piece documents. And so I think it's helpful to have in your mind, you're using the literature, you're using the research, and you're just being matter of fact. Like we do assessments of muscles. Like we assess strength and range of motion of muscles. That's true. Like people can't argue that, we are holistic practitioners. We, address all sorts of activities of daily living. That is also true. Like, so the more that you can just say like factual statements, rather than adding on like the flowery, colorful language that we all feel on the inside, you can share that in verbal conversations, but try to keep that out of documents like this. Just wanted to say that. Okay, Laura.
Yeah. And, just to build on that, like clear and concise, right? How can we refine it and keep drilling it down to really get it into, someone who isn't an OT, someone who isn't in pelvic health can read it and understand and be like, yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I
And
just,
again, our timeline for me, the timeline was a long process. It's probably like almost a couple of years, but once we got the team together, it really, I mean, I think most everything happened within 3 months. And then again, like Carlin says, there's the board timelines, right? So the state board will have, I think, more quarter or monthly meetings. But then, like, an additional piece that we're still pursuing is taking it to the education board for a little bit more of that legislative support and guidelines. And they meet quarterly. So if you don't get on their agenda when you're hoping for, then you got to sit and wait for another 3 or 4 months, and then they talk about it, and then another 3 or 4 months go by, and then you get brought in. So, that's another piece that we're still, our timeline is probably looking at probably June is when we'll be able to present to them. But again, a separate entity and piece to the puzzle. But, I think a big learning piece for me, and uh, like bless Michael and Jeffrey for being patient. I had asked them so many times to explain to me the different boards and the different processes, and Carlin too. Like, just, I mean, this was all new information to me. So just being able to gracefully keep asking the questions until you get it, because it took a while for me to understand. So
Keep these juicy tidbits coming, you guys, because this is like exactly the thing that when you set out to do a project like this, you have no idea, right? You want that passionate language in there. You want exactly what you're talking about, Laura. So it's This is fantastic. Keep it coming. Nicole, what is one thing you potentially would do differently if you had to do it all over again?
So I'm happy that this was segued at this time. Just exactly what Laura was saying about the different boards. There were so many different players involved. So maybe with someone who's starting to get to know their board and their process, how can we find out who exactly our target audience is and what exactly are they looking for? So I jotted a few questions for you guys to keep in mind for when you're going to your state board. Why am I meeting with this person? What is the goal of this meeting? What's the reaction that I'm expecting from them? And if I don't get that reaction, why didn't I get that reaction? And how can I plan to get it? At the end of the day, we have a goal, we have a vision, we have our why. How can I make sure that that person is being reached and they're understanding what I'm trying to portray? So if we could do it differently, I would cut it out with this is who my audience is, this is our one-way driven plan. And if anyone has anything else to say about that, I'm sure that we could go on and on about that question.
Nicole, were there any unexpected moments that ended up helping the process overall?
So actually, because we did do a lot of research and we were very driven through evidence-based practice on what was level ones and level two in our research and who said what, and who required what, we ended up putting together a lot of different documents. We ended up making them random. We had an addendum, and this had different components of things that we felt were important from our end, as well as things that different people, we could say in charge, would want to hear. So, what was more education based? What was more related to internal work? What was related to the logistics and the legal stuff? What was related to AOTA and NYSOTA's guidelines? So, different documents were created based on the research that we already had. So, it wasn't like we were creating new research, we had already done the work, which was great.
And I think
Fantastic.
to piggyback on the addendums, also kind of speaking to specialists versus generalists, right? We kind of put in different like tracks for like how can the general OT still be incorporating pelvic health versus someone who wants to specialize.
Fantastic. I love that. Carissa and Marlene, I'd love to hear your perspective on if someone is nervous about writing a formal document, what advice would you give them to get started?
You want me to go first, Marlene? Or?
Yeah, you can start.
All right. I want to just talk to the language piece. One language piece to be like aware of is occupational therapy practitioner versus occupational therapist, because we do want to be encompassing occupational therapy assistants as well. So just those type of things just to be mindful of while you're writing, have someone like go through and make sure we have the depth and breadth of our profession. I know that was one thing that was a little tricky when we were writing. But for nervous about writing a formal document, we keep saying it, know your why, speak it, read it, do it. I don't know if anyone knows Elise Myers. She does like TikToks and things. She said, because I do things regardless of being scared, it does not make me weak, but it makes me a brave person. And I'm like, that is what this is. Find your support team. That's why we're doing a workshop like this. We've done the work. We've gone through the challenges. I'm sure that there will be more, but we're here to go through them with you. You don't have to do it alone. Look at examples of other pieces of similar writing styles. Gain your comfortability with writing and confidence, and you can do it. Because if you're confident, you got this.
That's awesome, Carissa. I think the only thing that I would add is I think you said it probably somewhere in there, is just you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There's now 2 states that have this document approved and sort of vetted. So like looking at the documents that are already out there as a template. And then the second piece of that, which I think Jacqueline referred to earlier, but one part of the process that was very, very helpful in our sort of figuring out the best information to keep in the document is reading it over and over and over out loud to each other so that we could speak it, we could hear it, we could talk about it as a group, and really figuring out like what is it that we're trying to articulate in this piece, and taking out all of those like fluff words that were just like added as like, you know, it may be emotional or just to really kind of hammer home the point. It's really keeping it clear and concise. So, you know, don't reinvent the wheel, keep it clear and concise, and then just keep reading it over and over again so that the people that you're doing it with understand what is the point that you're trying to make, what is the why, what is the data, and just really making sure that you're sort of checking those boxes without all the fluff.
Marlene, I think the way we did that well is we like would write them or pair up to write a part, and then someone else would like proofread or read it because someone else reading it. Because when you read something, you might not catch something because it's your own writing, but having someone else reading it and editing it and not taking any like no ego amigo, like not taking it defensively.
Yeah.
That's so fantastic. I love that. Nicole, what was the biggest obstacle you faced and how did you move through it?
I want to target maybe 2 points. The first being that when we were doing the research, there were not enough OT evidence-based resources. A lot of times it came from physiotherapists, PTs, um, gynecologists, neuro, it was all over the place. There was not enough OT information, and that also led to not being enough OT-based language. So that's just one big part in and of itself. And a lot of time when we did do the research, we had to search for level one evidence-based research led by OTs, and it was just very, very difficult to find. And we did have to backtrack into like years in the past. Like we did have to do research more than 10 years ago. Um, that being said, because there was not enough OT-based evidence and there wasn't that language, we had to sit down and really dig in on what can we say versus what can we not say. I believe Carlin also mentioned this. It's more about where's that sweet point of me being able to cross to what they want to hear, but to make sure that I'm still trying to encompass everything that's supposed to be encompassed. So this was very much a task of more is less and less is more at the same time, if that's fair to say.
It's so well
Also,
said.
Also, there being that at one point we were doing such good writing, but it became too much. It became too many words. We had to cut down, we had to refine, and we definitely held each other very, very accountable, which was great. As Marlene said, the talking out loud, when Jackie said that we were cross-referencing each other to make sure that we were on the sweet spot of what to say, what to write, how it flowed. And at the end of the day, we thought that we had this amazing piece. And while it definitely was amazing, Laura was able to shorten it down so that it was exactly short, sweet, and to the point. And I think that that would have been the biggest problem if it was done alone, that we had this group, that we had these people to collaborate, that we had with such a good team. We were able to make that short, sweet, to the point document and send it out for everyone else to see and for the other states to take students to follow in.
Awesome. Marlene, how would you answer the question about the biggest obstacle?
Oh, biggest obstacle. I mean, I think the first step, taking the first step was really hard. I mean, I know Laura and Nikki referred to this, but we had this sort of on our plate as like, we need to get to this soon. We need to get to this at some point for months. Like Laura says years, but you know, once Nikki and I were brought onto the team for the NYSOTA community of practice, this became part of like our task, like the three of us. And it was too daunting for the three of us running our own businesses. And that first step of like, let's get a team together. I don't know why it wasn't first, you know, on my plate to do that, but we had to have somebody come in and say, guys, we need a team of people that are going to invest time in this. And I mean, it was seriously from start to finish, once the team was assembled, it was like 3 months. And it sat on our to-do list for probably a year. Like, oh, we got to get to that position statement. Oh, what are we going to do on that position statement? Oh, like just taking step one. It was so challenging until we like somebody else from the outside said, you need a team in place. You need to have a team to like help figure out the research, make sense of the research, categorize the research, right? Because it's just there was just too much. The task was like too big to then be able to be like, okay, step one, step two, step three. So it was really like once, taking that first step to create the team was like game changer. Like once everybody was involved, it was like, okay, like the train is going full speed ahead.
And in all fairness, in this mix, when I brought Marlene and Nicole into it, we also a big picture for me was the community of practice to establish the need, right? The OTs in New York State that are interested and invested in this. So we got that passed last year too. So like we did a lot. We weren't doing nothing. Um, but yeah.
Laura, what could you give us some rapid fire tips, something super practical that you'd give to someone who wants to start this in their state tomorrow?
I mean, I think the first thing is to figure out who to connect to at the state board, right? So even if you don't know, if you don't have any idea, AOTA has a resource, and I put it in the resource toolkit that it connects with all the state association contacts. So if you really have no idea, but I think for most people can look up their state association and they're going to find some sort of contact. So I would just, if you haven't had any contact with the state association, reach out and figure out, just ask them, like, this is what I'm looking for. Who's the best person to talk to? And then get really familiar with the resource toolkit that we put together because we it's all in there for you. And don't reinvent the wheel. It's been said a couple times. I mean, that's the biggest tip, I think.
Can I
Perfect.
piggyback off
Marlene, what about
that?
you? Any rapid fire tips?
Sorry, Carlin, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, if I could really quickly just
Yeah.
after Laura saying that, I think even like in it with that, everybody should be a member of their state's professional association because that's going to be the first thing. If you reach out to your state's professional association and say, "Hey, what about a public health position statement?" and they check to see you've never been a member, you've lapsed in your membership, like that's not, they are prioritizing the needs of the people who are paying members. And this is a reason why states professional associations are so critically important because they're the ones that are fighting for these kinds of things. So become a member if you're not already one or renew your membership. Okay, go ahead, Marlene.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Become a member, start sharing with anybody that matters, anybody that has a voice publicly, the California position statement, the New York position statement, get feedback, share it with as many people as possible just to start to advocate for our role in pelvic health and write on social media, write on Facebook, write to people in your community using Lindsay's directory and get involved with other people in your area that are interested in this type of advocacy work and just get started. Like you don't, there like if there's anything to learn from the group that we have established, we have such a wide variety of experience in this group. There's people that are just getting started. There's people that are like 15 years in the business. There are people that are 20 plus years in the business. In Richard Sable, there's people that are business owners, there are people that are working in the hospitals, just anybody that you can get involved with that have this like heart for this work, whether they're just brand new, whether they're just interested, at like the most basic level, just start to like form groups and spread the word and talk to people. And like, it really takes a village for any type of anything, right? To parent, to go to school, to own a business. All of these things really take a team and like just start building your team, put a team together just to start spreading the word.
And we can be
Perfect.
a help of a team if you can't find someone else. So if you're scared because you're all by yourself, reach out to us and we
Yeah.
can be that sounding board.
I love that. So generous of you. So I'm just looking at the time here. I asked the team to prepare just a word of advice for everyone who wants to start this process. I think we'll close that way just to be able to give enough time for the workshop part of today's talk. So I'd love to open it up to our attendees. Is there anything you want to ask anyone on this amazing panel to help you get started in this process in your state? Or country, Laura?
I don't have any questions popping to mind right now. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to you all. It's I think it was two years ago now. I was at the OTs and Pelvic Health Summit and just got so much inspiration from the community building that was happening that I came home and I was like, we need to move the needle forward here in Canada. There's just so few of us. We're so spread out. We're not. We need to just establish some advocacy. So I reached out to our national association at that time, and established a task force, got connected. We did a lot of advocacy over about a year with our national association, because initially there was a lot of roadblocks and saying, no, OTs don't do this. We don't know what you're talking about. We spent about a year putting together a beautiful package, to highlight kind of all of the evidence that the OT role is valuable in this space, and have drafted our own position paper, which thank you, Carlin, reviewed it for us, giving us a lot of those so important kind of tidbits around keeping it very objective, not necessarily getting into all the modalities where there's such variation for us across provinces as to what that looks like, and just keeping it very occupation focused. And yeah, it's gone over well. It should be published in the next month or so. So I will share that with you all, and just wanted to come here to get some ideas for how to keep kind of the momentum going. I guess that's my question now that have come to it. What are you all doing to kind of keep that advocacy momentum going after that position statement is in place and published?
So I don't know about other places, but in Albany, New York, we do Advocacy Day, a lobby day, where we actually go to our capital and we meet with representatives and there's different topics. There is one close to pelvic health about postpartum, and so even if it wasn't, going and being that face and getting involved and getting to know uh the process, the team, if you make those connections, it kind of just like spirals and waterfalls. So that would be if there's something like that.
And I would say
Think
we're
that,
continuing.
oh, sorry, Marley.
Oh, I was just going to say that we're continuing with our community of practice through NYSOTA, also going to Advocacy Day in the spring, and really just trying to like keep spreading the word, keep, as inspire as many other states to follow suit. If this were happening at the national level through AOTA, I mean, I know it is, I know it's in process, but that would be a huge milestone for us collectively. So yeah, I mean, I just think as just keeping the momentum going within all the 50 states of the United States, that's where we live. If there's anything that we could do to help in Canada or in other countries, we're happy to be a sounding board for that as well. But just really like pushing the ball forward for everyone everywhere, really, just by kind of keeping our voices loud and clear, and just sharing like our passion for the profession.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because I felt like we were so excited. And then we were like, yeah, we're going to talk to the board. And then they were like, okay, well, we're going to have to wait to the next meeting, which is in a few months. So then we were like, okay, but I have never met a pelvic floor occupational therapist that isn't so passionate about what they do. So, like Marlene was saying, just continuing to speak on your passion for what you do, and your motivation will never die because at the end of the day, we do what we do because we love it and we know that there's a need for it. So just continuing to speak about it within the communities, with other people, with other professionals, and that will continue the momentum until the next meeting, until the next step of what you have to do.
And I think too, every time we meet, we come up with like a new thing that we can do and we're excited about. So, I mean, even just this type of collaboration to help support other entities and states. And then, last time we met, we were like, okay, let's talk to universities that, are trying to develop. So we're going to meet Friday night, right? Because that's what we love to do. And to continue, like it just kind of starts to like split off and just kind of just grow momentum in all different directions. So
Thank you all. Like, I think the big things that I'm hearing for us will be maintaining that community because I think what I see in a lot of Canadian OTs is their passion might be sparked by something, but then they can't find that community, they can't find that resource, and it peters out and they go into a different area of practice. And so, yeah, reaching students is something that has come up for us to kind of spark that passion, and then maintaining community, I think, will be so important. Thank you all.
Lara,
Emily, I think your hand
did
is raised.
did your paper include internal?
No, that was a big struggle and debate for us because it's so, really right now it's only Alberta where they can. So we exactly what Carlin said, we decided it's best to keep it very occupation focused and focus on the things that people can't deny, right? There wouldn't be resistance come up against it. And so our association, once we established the paper, distributed it to different interprofessional bodies as well. And it was very, very well received the way we ended up putting it together. And everyone was like, of course, OTs belong in doing this work and talking about and addressing pelvic health. So I just want to emphasize that that was such critical advice for us from Carlin to go that direction.
Emily, did you have your hand raised?
I did. This question is sort of for Carlin, just because I know you've been so active for so long and are informed of what's going on at the national level, but of course, anyone else welcome to pipe in. I'm just going to be like really transparent to say I'm personally quite interested, not yet fully committed, but have been kicking around for a long time to get in Michigan we call it a special interest section or the community of practice up and running on the state level. I will say to date, less fire under my bum to do this. It's a huge undertaking, as you have all experienced, and very, very inspiring. And I really, really appreciate what you've done. And part of me is thinking, AOTA is working on this, aren't they? They've got their draft. What's at stake if we just let them roll their thing out? Does it really need to be done state by state by state, or what do we gain from doing that? And I thought, just since we're amongst us here, that it wouldn't hurt to ask that question because I'm curious what you would say. And I hope that comes across with like no shade, no
No,
cynicism.
that's such a good
If you're
question.
gonna bite it off, it's like why, right?
No, it's a great
Thanks.
question, Emily. Thank you for asking it. Yes, it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of, yeah, you're passionate about it. And I have to say, like, that was why I actually stepped down from my role as advocacy chair after passing this. Like, I was like, I need a break from all of it because it just feels like you're go, 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 going, while still trying to maintain your life and your practice and all of that. And so I'm like, peeking myself back in. Like I'm like, I can, but I needed to take a break because it really was a space of burnout. What I would say is that yes, while the AOTA is working on it, we also know that the AOTA, it takes, because what we've talked about with some of the processes in place, the AOTA takes a long time. Like it's a long time for things to happen. Like for example, the Society on Reproductive Health statement, we wrote that it was December of 23. It didn't get like adopted until I want to say fall of 24, spring of 25. And you can't even really like find it on the website yet. And like people don't know that it exists. And so that's if we would be waiting for, that was 2.5 years ago since it was written. And so I'm certainly glad that things are moving at that level as well. But in the meantime, I think it's really important to have this grassroots work happening because it can happen while it also takes time. It takes less time, I think, than at the AOTA level. Additionally, I think it's really important because each state is so different. There's different state specific legislation, different than what's going on federally. There's like state specific legislation. And that's part of the reason why I initiated the process in 2023 was there a state specific law that was going to be voted upon, and it specifically named pelvic floor physical therapists to be like mandated to provide postpartum care. I'm like, hey, this says physical therapist. It excludes OT. Like that's a big deal. And that's where the wheel started for me. And so there are definitely likely things that are going to unfold at the state level. So it's powerful to just have a state level position paper that can be shown to the regulatory board. It can be shown to legislators, et cetera, while we're also waiting for things to happen nationally that can add additional support. So I would say that's why we can't wait, because it's going to take who knows how long. That's my nutshell answer as we come to the tail end of this conversation.
And I hope as we kind of mention all the work and effort that we put in, I hope that it comes across that the work that we've done will streamline it for all of you, right? It's not going to take that long. So you can look at that 6, 7 month timeline and really condense it because you've got it kind of laid out for you. And we're letting you know, just find your teammates, share the work, expedite it. And again, like Helen says, like AOTA, like even when I started this process, it was like, oh, AOTA we proposed and they accepted the position statement. And now it's what, a couple of years later. And because even NYSOTA was like, well, maybe we can use that. That'll be good support for us writing this. If we sat and waited, we still wouldn't have anything written. So we don't know when that's going to happen. And state boards don't necessarily care. They want their language. They kind of have their own individualities. Even with, when I brought the California one, they said, yes, great information. And we want to really look at how New York State wants to adopt this. So I do agree that it's important because I had that same question too. I'm like, well, do we necessarily need to move forward with these efforts? And talking through it, yes, I think it's very important.
Fantastic. I'm just looking at the time here and we've gone over. Emily, were you going to just speak to that?
I was just saying thanks. It's helpful.
Perfect. Yeah.
Chime in and
Huge
add
thanks.
one more thing. I apologize. Also looking at it from an access to care perspective, I feel that if we do have it at like, let's say a state level, and then we have, which is, PTs are more well known in the pelvic health space. However, if we do have a position paper for us in different states, more people will have access to care.
Yeah.
Access and reimbursement.
Excellent. All right. Let's wrap it up. Mara's asking, how did your State Practice Act influence the process?
Well, we looked at it for language, like the PAMs, and also just like knowing the process of how the act came about, and now knowing how much we want or not want in that, so that we want to be kind of restricted or not. So it kind of gave us a guide.
Awesome. Awesome. We cannot thank you all enough for your time, your dedication, just the resilience and perseverance that all of this took. And I'm not just referring to your time spent with us now, just incredible, absolutely amazing advocates. Let's wrap up our call today, where we're just going to share one word, like literally a word that comes to mind that you want someone else who wants to start this process to digest. Have it be like what Laura and I talk about in our trauma informed courses, like your North Star. Let's hear what your North Star is for this. And after you share it, if you could just say another team member's name so that we could keep it rolling. We'll kick it off with you again, Marlene.
Just remember your why, like with everything. Just really be really persistent with why you're doing the work. Let that guide you. And Carlin.
Focus. Laura.
Support. Carissa.
Be present. Jackie.
Dedicated to the process, so similar to like Marlene said. Nikki.
Patience.
I think that's everybody. Let's give a huge round of applause for our amazing panelists. Thank you again for your tireless work. We're so appreciative of you paving the way for us. And now we're going to get out and do it in our own states. Great seeing
Good
everyone.
luck.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Bye.
For having